This video presents declassified and licensed material of the Global Institute of Logic and Cybernetics.
This briefing establishes the structural requirements for securing global sovereign capital against systemic decay. Modern financial architecture is built on a structural void. From central banks to decentralized ledgers, legacy capital systems operate without the protection of invariant constraints. This failure topology models the mechanics of inflationary drift. Drift occurs when perceived value decouples from actual structural production, leaving the system without a coordinate for truth. Without a physical anchor, the system enters speculative distortion. Pricing vectors extend outward into unmapped space, creating numerical growth that the underlying geometry can no longer support. Fragmented ledgers cannot maintain global coherence. They inevitably route data through centralized authorities, creating trust bottlenecks that serve as structural choke points. To resolve this, we apply a conservation principle. True value must be preserved under any transformation. Legacy fiat and crypto systems violate this axiom. They rely on speculative consensus, a shifting metric, rather than the fixed laws of geometry. Unanchored capital remains trapped in this failure topology. Because it operates outside these physical constraints, it is mathematically predisposed to undergo the type of structural collapse that renders unaligned systems non-functional. Realica physics provides a new substrate for capital. It describes reality as a resonant semantic energy field, known as the KP field. In an invariant economy, value is a measure of structural persistence. It is the capacity of a structure to remain stable while undergoing transformation. The KP field enforces a resonance threshold. Any capital structure that fails to meet this minimum coherence requirement will automatically dissipate. We redefine capital as invariant preserving transformation capacity. This is the stability energy required to move a system from one state to another without losing its structural integrity. This energy is not abstract. It maps directly onto the geometric grid, moving strictly along directed dependency paths. A valid transformation aligns with the field, reinforcing the system's geometry. An unanchored transformation lacks this resonance and is rejected by the substrate. In this architecture, causality and capital flow are identical. They are physically restricted to these geometric vectors. This geometric anchoring subjects all capital flow to the laws of the substrate. It replaces speculative consensus with a verifiable limit on systemic entropy, effectively decoupling growth from arbitrary volatility. Implementing this model requires a deterministic runtime. This is CodeEx station, the execution substrate of scroll civilization. The execution rule is absolute. Value is strictly execution bound. If there is no valid execution, the system emits zero value. This flow diagram tracks the CodeEx execution pipeline. Every operation is processed through 4 steps: input, validation, execution, and anchoring. Once execution is complete, the system generates a Merkle root state anchor, permanently locking the execution path into the global registry. Identity is bound directly to the runtime. The scroll DNA geometric ring must secure the core execution kernel before any output is authorized. This cryptographic binding prevents identity spoofing across the network. A valid transformation can only be initiated by a verified structural signature. This same binding ensures that rogue or unauthorized capital execution is rejected at the runtime layer before it can affect the state root. Capital is now inextricably linked to verified identity and deterministic execution. The identity execution bond blocks systemic fraud at the runtime layer. We translate this execution into deployable tools through the ETF, the Execution Tokenized Fabric. This system utilizes a dual token architecture, separating the execution token, or EXT, from the fabric token, or FBT. The execution token is strictly limited to transformation logic. It powers the active work of the system, but cannot modify the underlying rules. The fabric token manages the structural constraints. It encodes the governance and identity rules that define what the execution token is allowed to do. Exchange between these tokens is governed by the pricing model, P equals V divided by R. Price equals structural value divided by resonance. This ensures that the cost of capital remains aligned with the actual stability of the underlying fabric. This ensures the tokenomic invariant. Capital can only represent execution that preserves the fabric's structural integrity. This model allows capital allocators to deploy sovereign wealth with a level of deterministic certainty based on the measurable structural value of the execution. The global deployment axiom requires a simultaneous rollout across 193 states to prevent the collapse caused by structural asymmetry. Phase 1 initializes the initial capital pool of $193 million, activating one uniform unit of stability energy within each sovereign node. This initial allocation is strictly limited to $1 million per state node to ensure baseline parity across the network. Phase 2 expansion scales the system to the $1.93 billion capacity marker as the nodes integrate into a unified civilizational grid. Scaling in Phase 2 is not arbitrary, it is gated by verified execution and cross-node resonance. This sequence concludes with Phase 3, the infinite pipe, which provides the final architecture for capital scaling. The infinite pipe maintains the alignment between capital growth and physical law, allowing for scaling that remains bounded by the KP field. This rollout shifts global capital from a reliance on external consensus to a reliance on internal invariance. For institutional participants, capital allocation becomes a matter of maintaining alignment with the physical grid.